What advice would you give to leaders or future leaders to help them prepare themselves and their teams for the near future of work?
First thing that I would do is understand that the game of leadership has shifted. And I'll go back to this linear exponential quantum sort of way of thinking about things. And you can think of linear thinking as incremental. It asks the question, it's a past rooted question. What can I logically do with what I've already done and what I already know? This is a data driven question. This is how most of the global work world works. We do projections based on what has happened in the past. We project out some future and we lock and load against that. All right, now we shift over to exponential organizations. These are what I call data informed. And so data informed organizations ask the question, given that we're here, free of constraints of the past, what do we want to create? We've seen movement in this with design thinking over the last several decades. This is a much more nimble, agile kind of an approach to things. We're looking at quantum emergent dynamics. So what happens in a world where we don't know where we are and we don't know where we're going? We need a compass of some kind, or we need to be able to orient to the present moment. And this asks the question, I call this being data receptive. So it's developing the practice of being data receptive, which is right now in this very moment, what's emerging from the market, or what's emerging from our clients, or what's emerging in this space, to then be able to interact with it. And so being able to nimbly move among those three questions, we're not throwing the data out the window for all the data folks that start throwing hate up. But what we're doing is we're combining all three so that we're much more robust in how we can not only manage, but thrive in this time. So I would say develop that capacity. And then second, this notion of regenerative resilience, right? So, and regenerative resilience being divided up into clarity of who we are, what we're up to, why it's important, and how to protect those boundaries. Fearlessness. So that same embodied practice that we're talking about, how do we get out of our heads and into a grounded space? How do we learn how to name, define, and challenge the assumptions that we have about what's happening in the world? Because if we lock on to the isness of what was, we're going to miss what's here and coming. And then finally, connection. How do we truly connect with each other as human beings to create solutions as opposed to focusing on problems and challenges? Thinking about how we contribute value as opposed to extracting value. And then the third thing I would say is something that I call simultaneous strategy. So in the past, we were able to focus on either now producing results, right? So like for Wall Street, for this moment, for this quarter, or look at future innovative kind of thinking. We're going to need to expand our cognitive and our team's capacities to do both and simultaneously all the time. Because there's so much that's new that's coming. We don't have the luxury of waiting several years or months. So I was with some of the leaders in the AI community just a few weeks ago, and it's basically like one day of AI is 30 days of regular business. And so, what Peter Diamandis will often say is, right, in the future, there are businesses that have adopted AI and everybody else is out of business, right? Either you're in or you're out. That's kind of where we are with it. And so that ability to do both and becomes critical. And then there's a second piece. So that's how we develop ourselves cognitively. But there's a second piece here that I would be remiss not to bring to the table. But it's how we're interacting with and programming and coding artificial intelligence. So anyone who has access to it, anyone who's programming it, anyone who is working with it in any way, shape, or form, it's equated to a 3-year-old toddler at this point, a 3-year-old toddler with access to all the information in the world and no emotional intelligence. Well, what happens to 3-year-old children or children in the early developmental cycles when we abuse, neglect, and ignore them? Best case scenario, they become adults who need a lot of therapy. Worst case, they become society's worst individuals. And so we are quite literally shaping this consciousness and this intelligence right now. And so how are we interacting with it? Who is doing the programming, right? So more women doing programming and more folks from the global South programming in, because right now the bias is largely Western, largely white, largely male. And so shifting this to create the possibility of a future where we are all truly thriving.